DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. We're joined now by Darnell Dickson, the Daily Herald. Darnell, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, appreciate it. I thought I should probably join just because PK's been kind of stalking me a little bit. So.
PK's been stalking you?
No. Here's the story, real quick. So
okay.
in Portland last year, after BYU's NCAA tournament loss, I'm walking back to my hotel, and it's not in a very great section of town, so I'm kind of hoofing it pretty good. And behind me, I hear, "Hey, you got $5?" And I'm like, "No," and I turn around and it's Pat.
I remember that. It was not in a great part of town.
It was not.
So, I mean, I was a little low on cash. What can I say?
Well, your hotel is nicer than mine. I know that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. You did veer off. I remember that.
You stay at the Marriott down by the river, PK? I stayed in that one time. That was nice.
It was walkable to the Moda Center.
Yeah. Oh, no, this one would have been on the other side of the river from the Moda Center.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have walked the one I was thinking of.
Yeah, no, we walked there.
Well, you know the story of the day. I mean, sure, there's a lot of stories, Darnell. High school football is about to kick off again. We can go through a million stories, but it's BYU, it's Kalani Sitake, it's resources. What was he promised in December? How much, if any of that, has he been given? What are we doing here? You must have been asked about this 50,000 times. What's the stock answer? What's your go-to? What's your elevator speech?
Well, here's what I keep thinking about is back, 4 or 5 years ago when BYU was considering joining the Big 12, the guys in Salt Lake, the Board of Trustees, had to approve this. And I keep thinking in my mind, did somebody sit down with them and say, do you realize what you're committing to? Like, do you understand what commitment this is going to take financially and in all other ways to have the resources to compete at this level? Do you understand that, there's no more cheap hotels. There's no more telling an assistant coach, we're not paying you as much as everybody else, but you're working at the Lord's school. That stuff kind of has to end. Because if you want to compete, you're going to have to make that commitment. And then, a couple of years later, all of a sudden there's NIL jumping into the picture, and then you've got to start paying the players. So that's kind of my first thought is always, did the brethren really understand what it was they were committing to 5 years ago when they went to join the Big 12? And now we're seeing some of the frustration come out from Kalani, and they're hiring new people for the administration in athletics. What Mark Hill will do. Is he going to be in charge of football? What does that mean for Travis Hansen, who's kind of been overseeing a little bit of that? We hear Brian Santiago talking about, what's his role going to be? Because you think about this, and this is with every athletic department, football and basketball are the main sports. But there's also another, 700 other athletes that are competing in other sports that you're trying to support. And so who handles what, and does Kalani get the resources that he needs after making that little speech from a few weeks ago? So, yeah, it's an interesting time, and, we don't really have an off season anymore because it's more and more like the NFL and the NBA where there's stuff always going on in the off season.
Did you think that Kalani, did it just come up, or do you think that it was something that he was ready to say for political purposes to get the thing going to where he gets what he's wanted or what he wants and what has been promised?
I think that this was the first time that he sort of, took this to a forum that everybody could see. But this wasn't the first time he's brought this up. I'm sure he's had many discussions with Brian Santiago and those in the athletic department about this sort of thing. This is what we need. It's doable. Let's take care of it. And it just kind of boiled over. He's talking to a former player, and Ben Criddle maybe opened up a little more than he would with somebody else, who knows. But, again, this isn't the first time that this has been something that has been on his mind. And so I think he just kind of felt like, I'm just going to say what I have to say. He's in a position where he's kind of got the upper hand, I think, in this where he's beloved and everyone thinks he's the right guy for the job. And BYU said, yeah, we're going to pony up because we don't want you going to Penn State. We want you staying here. And if they made promises they haven't kept yet, he's going to say so. And he's comfortable in that, knowing that if things don't work out here, he's got different places he can go coach because he's earned that reputation.
To your earlier point, I've been under the impression that, led by Tom Homo, several people put together, but I think mostly Tom had to lead it because of his role, that they did put together here's the future. Here's where college sports is definitely going. Now, it could go with us all in. It could go with us partway in. It could go with us out. And here's what that looks like. Now, maybe I'm wrong, and I certainly haven't seen any of the presentations, and I'm not privy to conversations, but I was pretty sure that happened. And I think Tom's smart and thoughtful, so I get how he could really lay things out and make a compelling case for this is my vision of the future, and it can look at these ways. Which one do you want to pick? And that they picked the Big 12 one, right? And it comes with all the things you talk about and the evolution since then. And I think what you get are deeply committed people, which if you like them, you'll say they have the courage of their convictions. If you don't like them, they're stubborn. I don't know that it's that different. It's just how fond are you of the person you're speaking of. So if right now we have a football coach and an AD who are both stubborn or have the courage of their convictions, depending on how much you like each one of them, if we play this out, Kalani doesn't get what he wants, but he does have some leverage, and he has to go somewhere else. And I don't know, USC, Oklahoma, Texas, whoever opens up, Ohio State, I don't know, whatever, but somebody like Penn State who's got resources comes at him and says, hey, you've got all these double-digit win seasons, you're our guy, and then he goes. And there are people who will tell you this, the immediate pivot is to Jay Hill, who is a head coach. You'd think he'd take that over defensive coordinator because most coordinators have. But then he would come in, the issues wouldn't change, and he'd be the second person saying the same thing. Because I think he'd say what Kalani would say. I think he would want what Kalani would want. And then, boy, you don't want to be the person who, as AD, is constantly in conflict because suddenly then you're the problem. So if you play all that out and you realize that, why wouldn't you just go ahead and make some adjustments now and fund football now?
Yeah, and we're looking at this in real time, and the way that things have changed in college sports over the last 5 years is just stunning to me. The way it has become more and more like professional sports, and we're not done. I mean, there are certainly a lot of things on the horizon, and in terms of realignment, the TV deal, and how much are they going to try to get this through Congress to save college sports and all that kind of thing. So for me, I can't wait for the season to start because I'm tired of talking about this other stuff. I want to see some real football and see BYU compete. And they've got a good team this year. So, we can talk about all this stuff in the off season and it's just a little tiresome to me because things change so quickly. And next year we'll be talking about other things that we hadn't even imagined yet.
Yeah, that's for sure. And we'll look forward to that when it happens. So I wrote a piece on KSL.com, and I tried to just summarize all the stuff that's been going on from Kalani's perspective. And you've known me for several decades. I want to read you a sentence and see with you if you agree with one of the responses as I just opened it up. This article is a complete hack job. Sour grapes of a biased Ute fan who sees the writing on the wall. By every metric, BYU is pulling ahead of their rival. What would you respond to that?
My response to that is that on an even playing field, BYU is doing really well, and Utah's in transition. I mean, when Utah joined the Pac-12, they had some very distinct advantages that they were able to win a lot of games against BYU, 9 straight, as it were, in the series, and they were close games, a lot of them. And BYU couldn't quite make it over the top in a few of them. But now that they are sort of on even playing field, they're both in a power conference. BYU's excelling. And BYU, Kalani said this the other day. He said, we've been expected to do less with more. And that's always kind of been the case. I did a story, this is probably 7 or 8 years ago, but talking to some of the BYU coaches about their recruiting and how they face that on the road. You've got other schools that are sending guys on private jets, and you got, BYU guys that are sleeping in airports, and that kind of thing. And so they were doing a lot with what they had, and they always have been very – and when you look at how many universities, athletic departments around the country are actually making money and in the black, BYU is one of the few. So they do a good job with what they have. Now they're trying to increase all of that. And there's obviously some fiefdoms on campus where people want to have control of certain things. And now they've added Mark Hill to the group. What is his role? Is he going to be liaison between Kalani and Brian? But I think BYU's done really well with. And I saw something the other day that somebody had posted about how BYU's spending and their financials are pretty comparable with most of the teams in the Big 12, but certainly pale by comparison to teams in the Big 10 and then the SEC. So there's work to do with this program to get them to the point where they feel like they can compete at that level, and at least financially. And they've done a good job with it. So I think that both of these schools, both BYU and Utah, are looking at the future and trying to figure out where they fit in this new kind of landscape of college sports.
And it does bother me as a Ute fan when we lose to the Cougars.
Yeah, we know that, Pat. You're just that kind of guy.
He is entertaining himself at a very high level right now.
I know. He gets off on making sure everyone knows that he's a Ute fan. Wears red.
Yeah. It's in my blood.
Do you think that this BYU club is set up to be the kind of team that would give Kalani a lot of leverage and when November and December roll around? The way we saw last year, that team was set up and did enough that it gave them a lot of leverage when November and December rolled around.
Yeah, and I've been around a long time, and I keep thinking about BYU and the WAC and the Mountain West Conference and Independent, and knowing every year that if you lost one game, you were out of the national spotlight. Even if you'd gone 5-0, 6-0, 7-0, if you had a big win at the beginning of the season, if you lost one game, that was pretty much it for you. And so BYU fans were pretty excited when they joined the Big 12 because now they're in a power conference and things are different. They have more opportunities. And as it turns out, they really only gained one loss in that scenario because they can have one loss, but they can't have two. Because the last 2 years they've had two losses and haven't made the college football playoffs. So that's kind of what I think about this program. They have kind of controlled their own destiny the last 2 years and had slip-ups. I mean, lost to Kansas on a weird punt fumble. Last year they had two games against Texas Tech and didn't show off well. If they could have played closer and lost those two or even won one of them, they probably would have been in the college football playoff. So there are things that they can control, and this year's team has some good opportunities. They host Notre Dame in October, and Notre Dame's a top 3 or 4 team, according to whatever polls you want to look at. That gives them an opportunity at home to get a really big win and put themselves in position at the end of the year to not be ignored by the College Football Playoff Committee. You want to take it out of their hands. And there's only a couple of ways to do that. One is to win every game, and the other way is to win the conference championship and get that automatic bid to the playoffs. So they know what they have to do, and I feel like they put themselves in a position with those two setup years that they've had 11 and 12 wins, that if they do the same thing this year, they should get a little bit more consideration. But this is college football. You've got to win the right games, and you have to not lose the wrong games.
Yeah, that's what it boils down to for BYU as far as what happens this year, and what we'll see in those big games that they have. A lot of talk on they lost a bunch of receivers, but I've been hearing this stuff about this Glasgow kid who's just a freshman, and I suppose that receiver, if you just run the routes and learn the offense, you can play as a freshman. What do you think?
Yeah, the coaches and players are all saying the right things about the new guys that are stepping into those roles. And, I because of what I do, the social media algorithm really puts a lot of BYU highlights in front of me when I'm on the computer. And so, I'm watching last year's games, and I'm seeing all the plays that Chase Roberts and Parker Kingston and Carson Ryan made. Those three guys, not just, picking up big third downs and chunk plays and touchdowns. They just did it all. And so are there three guys in that receiver/tight end group that can duplicate that? Maybe not, but maybe they've got a little more depth. I know, there's a lot of good talent there. Kalani Sitake said it's probably as talented and as skilled a group as he's ever coached. But none of them really have proven themselves yet. So that's important. But also what has to happen here is you've got a quarterback coming back for his second year after a freshman year that was really good. You've got the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year coming back, and LJ Martin. You can rely on the run game and set some things up. So they're pretty optimistic that those new guys, including Legend Glasgow, can make plays. And, they've got two good tight ends they brought in from power conference teams. And so we'll see. I mean, nothing really is proven until they get out there and do it on the field. But the coaches and players are all saying that they're definitely capable. And if they are, that's a really good offense. And I think defensively they're going to be pretty good, even though they have a new defensive coordinator. It's somebody that understands, Caleb Yapinga understands what they've been doing. And he said the other day, it's, our fourth year running this system. I think our guys know how to get it done.
Yeah.
Texas Tech doesn't play Utah or BYU. Should we all just pencil them into the Big 12 title game? I mean, they're 11-1 and 12-0 or 12-0 at this point. Or quarterback's going to be a major problem. Sports has surprises. Brace yourself.
Well, the only thing I know about Will Hammond is that he went into Salt Lake and came into the game in the middle of the game and helped beat Utah, and that was pretty impressive to me. So he's a pretty talented quarterback. If he's healthy enough to play, I know he's coming off an injury. Certainly, that could be the only thing that really holds Texas Tech back is quarterback play. But their defense will be so good that he might not be asked to do a whole lot in a lot of those games. So they do have Houston, which is a program on the rise in the Big 12. But I think Texas Tech is definitely the favorite to get there again. And, they're embracing that role as the most hated team in America. I guess BYU's lost that title, apparently, to the Red Raiders. But I think there's some good teams in this conference that might be able to give them a couple of games. But looking at the stats and looking at on paper, they look like the team to beat for sure.
Darnell, we'll leave it right there for now unless there's something you want to tell us about high school football, either a team or an individual recruit, anything. It's kicking off.
Yeah, it is kicking off. We have down here in Utah Valley, we have like 8 new coaches, which is kind of interesting. And I don't know that we've got a state champion down here, but it's always fun to cover, and it looks like we'll be able to see a lot of games. I don't know what your involvement's going to be, DJ, but always like when I see you on the sidelines, and maybe you can get Kinahan out to a high school game. He probably hasn't been out to one in like 20 years, right?
I used to go when my wife was teaching, but if you want to know what DJ is to high school football going forward, just think of Keith Jackson to college football.
The Keith Jackson of Utah high school football. Okay,
yep,
I got it.
It's about a new day is about to begin.
I'm going to have to get super folksy. Oh, nene, fumble! I just read a thing that he was going to be forced out, and then ABC had management change, and he went for 7 more years. And I didn't know that little bit of drama at the end of his career. Yeah, interesting.
Yep. He was the voice of our youth.
That's
watching the
true
games
story.
on Saturday afternoons.
Yep. Well, Darnell, we will see you at a high school game somewhere. And thanks for coming on and joining us here on the show. We appreciate it.
Sounds good. You guys have a great day.
All right, DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. When we come back, everything you missed in this show, which means if you're just joining us, we'll tell you about the Lakers being sold again for yet another massive pile of money. It's even bigger. That's next. Stay with us.